Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by Pielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church over in Jackson, New Jersey. Got a little read that I'm going to have for them in a little bit. Ton of stuff we're going to get into, and obviously we're going to start the program today by talking about yesterday's Super Bowl. And I tell you what stands out about it is the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that had not won the Super Bowl, has now won their first Super Bowl. And I think there is something interesting about that, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But I was kind of thinking about my reaction over what I saw yesterday and what kind of stood out the most to me. And I didn't want it to intertwine with anybody else's reaction. So I actually made a point today to stay away from talk radio or reactions of what people that get paid to do what they do respond to what they saw. And obviously the Philadelphia Eagles beating the New England Patriots 41-33, and I don't think there was very much about it that came over as a surprise. I thought this was a game that was going to pretty much come down to the wire, and let's be serious, it did. If it wasn't for the fumble on that last drive by Tom Brady, we may have been looking at deja vu all over again. It looked like Brady and the Patriots really had no issue going up and down the field on that Eagles defense. And that was one thing that kind of stood out for me in retrospect, was the fact that the Eagles, very highly touted defense, a defense that has done a lot of good this year, and was able to hold a Minnesota team last week to pretty much nothing, looked to show some potential matchup problems for the Patriots. But I tell you, first of all, congratulations to the Eagles and their fans and the city of Philadelphia. Yeah, they're finally Super Bowl champions. But the one thing that stood out to me that I'll start out by talking about is the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Hey, they got a lot of credit during the regular season. They did a very good job during the regular season. And to a certain amount in the postseason. They did not in the Super Bowl. I mean, to allow Tom Brady to throw for over 500 yards against you. I know this isn't time to criticize the Philadelphia Eagles. They just won the Super Bowl. But that defense, which everybody was saying was untouchable or was going to pose matchup problems for the New England Patriots, did not. Now, in the end, what are you judged by? You're judged by whether you win or lose the game. And you know what? The Philadelphia Eagles won the game, so this is something that does not get discussed. The Eagles' defense did not look good. They did not get the job done. Obviously, that big play that was made late in the game to strip Tom Brady and come up with the fumble and the fumble recovery determined the game. But to that point, Tom Brady had the ability to go up and down the field with 3 different receivers catching for over 100 yards and pretty much somebody open every single time. Now, once again, the issue is not something that cost the Philadelphia Eagles the game, but it's something that does not get mentioned simply because they won. The other thing that has to get changed, and if I'm the NFL, if I'm the commissioner's office, if I'm the replay committee, if I'm the rules committee, they need to spend 100% of their focus this offseason on determining what is a catch and what is not a catch. Because you saw 2 instances in the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to disagree with any one of the calls that were, number one, made on the field and upheld after review. But we all know that we were looking at both the Clement touchdown and the Ertz touchdown, and whether they were considered catches and touchdowns is not the issue here. The issue is you've seen similar plays that have happened in other games that were overturned. And the fact that years have gone by now, and we've seen many instances where plays that were similar to that or the exact replica of what we saw in the Super Bowl were overturned previously in other games, cost other teams games, and were not called the same way that they were called in the Super Bowl is a problem. It's a problem on many fronts. Now, if you're asking me, if you're, let's say, a Philadelphia Eagles fan that's saying, John, you expect them to overturn either one of those calls? I don't have an issue with those calls being upheld. And in fact, if those calls being upheld is now the new determination of what the rule is in the NFL in regards to a catch and how a catch should be judged, then I'm fine with it. But from this point forward, there better not be another situation on a similar play where that's either ruled not a catch on the field or ruled to catch on the field and overturned. And I don't care about any of the other issues that exist with the National Football League right now. What has to happen is this determination of what a catch is and what the call should be 100% of the time needs to be clarified. Because I tell you, you slow motion the play down, you give the freeze frames, it creates, like I said earlier, and I've said this weeks ago, creates an alternative source of reality. It creates a reality that you look at in a freeze frame in the instant spot of each one of these pictures, and you're looking at a different reality that existed in full speed. That's created a problem for the National Football League for a couple of years now. Certainly reared its ugly head during the regular season. And as we look at the Super Bowl, we saw two plays that were called a catch and called a touchdown on the field and were upheld upon replay review that were too similar to plays that during the regular season as early as this year were overturned upon the replay review at those times. And like I said, my issue is not whether those plays should have been touchdowns. It's the fact that the National Football League has not been consistent with its replay review and the decisions that have been made on plays that are too similar. So that's something that if the National Football League does nothing else in this offseason, they need to determine what a catch is and how the replay is going to determine plays that are similar to that going forward. They need to make sure every single official, whether they're on the field, whether they're in New York, or wherever the replay is being overlooked from, everybody has to be on the same page, understanding absolutely 100%, without a doubt, what a catch is, what a catch is not, and what plays are going to be overturned upon review, and what plays are going to be kept the exact way that they are. And it has to be cut and dry, absolutely no doubt about it whatsoever. Now, I understand the fans and the viewers, they need to understand it too, but I'm not so focused on them right now. I think the National Football League has to understand from themselves, and they have to look at every single one of these disputed plays, whether they were upheld or overturned upon review, and say, did we make a mistake? Did we not make a mistake? It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. As we sit here on February 5th, 2018, the National Football League has to look at every single catch and non-catch that has happened prior to today at this very moment, and come up with a formula, with a rule to implement and make sure there's no doubt about it. And we say, if this happened, that's going to be a catch. If this happened, that's not going to be a catch. It doesn't matter how it's ruled, what the ruling is on the field with the officials, because they're looking at it at full speed, which none of us that's looking at it on replay will ever see. We'll never see something at full speed and have to make a quick decision on. We got the benefit of the replay as the viewers, as the fans, as the media, as the people that are following the game. So we're looking at it different than what the officials on the field are seeing at full speed. So that human element, whether they make a mistake, it's understandable. It's going to happen. But we need to know when these plays are reviewed, and we know every scoring play is going to be reviewed. And if it's a matter of a catch or no catch that doesn't result, isn't determined as being either a touchdown or a turnover, it's up to the coaches to throw the challenge flag out on the field. But from this point forward, past February 5th, 2018, the next National Football League game that is played during the exhibition season, in preseason, there will not be, or there should not be, another snap taken on a National Football League field without this being 100% clarified. So every official that's involved, either making a call on the field or upon the replay review, knows without a doubt what's going to constitute a catch, what's not going to constitute a catch. They have plenty of examples now to look back on it and maybe even reflect on some of the mistakes that perhaps they made. Because the fact that the same exact play has been duplicated time after time, and there's been conflicting reviews and conflicting decisions, whether it's been upheld or overturned, is something that is up to the National Football League and its officials to clarify. And once again, I don't care if they do anything else this offseason. It has to be priority number one, and it has to be squared away. And you know what? The fans, the people that are following the game, the players, the coaches, they're all owed the NFL and the officials to get this right. Back to the game. Listen, an outstanding game to watch. Philadelphia Eagles are now team number 20 out of its 32 teams that have won a Super Bowl. As we sit today, there are now 12 teams that have not won a Super Bowl. 4 of them have never been there before. The Lions, the Browns, the Jaguars, and the Houston Texans. 3 other teams have been there and lost. The Arizona Cardinals, the Tennessee Titans, and the Los Angeles Chargers. Couple different teams. The Cincinnati Bengals and Carolina Panthers have lost twice. And also the Atlanta Falcons. And then the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings are all 0 for 4. So as when we're talking about what's good for the league, and I say this is good for any league in regards to professional sports, is when you see a team that goes out there and wins a championship for the first time. Because you can look back at the history of that franchise and all the struggles and all the other times they came close. And I say the greatest thing about professional sports from a fan's perspective and from a media markets standpoint, from the players and the coaches, they all have that opportunity. And some people may say that it's not even. Maybe the playing field isn't just as fair when we're talking about some teams in some markets. But we got the Eagles, who are Super Bowl champions, a team that has never won the Super Bowl before, a team that hadn't won since they won the NFL championship in 1960. You had the Houston Astros, a team in Major League Baseball that had been around since 1962, winning their first World Series in a 55-year history of its franchise. And I know there's plenty of people out there that like to see dynasties, and I'm one of them. If you're going to ask me what team I was pulling for in the Super Bowl, I look back at the history of the National Football League and hadn't really seen too many dominant teams like the New England Patriots and what they've done over the last 18 years. The fact that they were in their 8th Super Bowl. They were in their 3rd Super Bowl in the last 4 years, winning the previous 2. I'm one of those that's in favor of the dynasty. I want to see a team that we look back 20 years from now and say, wow, they were pretty good. You look back at the Boston Celtics of the 50s and the 60s and the early part of the 70s and the dominance they had with Bill Russell, who was their power forward, their team leader, and the last couple of years was their head coach. I look back at the New York Yankees teams of the late 30s and that run that they had from 1947 to 1964, where they were in 17 World Series. Joe DiMaggio, a Major League Baseball player that could say he won 10 World Series championships. And I also allow it to go to the world of individual sports. When you look at Tiger Woods and everything he's done, attempting at this point of his life to maybe win another major and perhaps chase the great Jack Nicklaus and his 18 golf majors. Roger Federer and his 20 major tennis championships. I mean, it takes a lot. I know it's harder to do when we're talking about a team sport, but when we see runs, pretty similar to what you saw with the San Francisco Giants, winning 3 World Series in 5 years. The New York Yankees prior to that, winning 3 World Series in 4 years from 1996 to 2000. If you go back to the 1970s, the Oakland Athletics, those great teams with Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter and Raleigh Fingers, winning 3 straight World Series from 1972 to 1974. And perhaps what we are in the midst of right now in the National Basketball Association with the Golden State Warriors. They've won 2 of the last 3 NBA championships. They've been in the finals the last 3 years. They look like the odds-on favorite to win again. And how far will it go? How much can it keep the momentum going? How much time will go by until the rest of the league, or there's at least enough competition to make it at least seem that it's not so easy for the Golden State Warriors? 20 years from now, are we going to look at this as one of the great runs in NBA history? That stuff fascinates me. It may not be for the next person. And the question always is, once a team wins, we saw this in baseball. After the Houston Astros won the World Series, the talk was, is this the beginning of a dynasty? You say that every year about every team that wins. The Philadelphia Eagles, well, listen, they got a chip on their shoulder now. They won a Super Bowl without their starting quarterback. There's going to be questions whether Nick Foles comes back next year. He may not. Maybe he ends up being somebody else's starter. Maybe he doesn't want to be Carson Wentz's backup after winning a Super Bowl MVP. I wouldn't blame him. But every team, every single time a team wins a major sports championship, it's thrown at them, this is the beginning of the dynasty. And you know what? How many times is that said, and how many times did that team not become a dynasty and be forgotten about a year or two later? So it makes sports great. National Football League, there's 32 teams. There's a chance that every single one of those 32 teams, regardless of where they sit right now, could be something worth talking about next year. The amount of activity that happens during free agency, the strength in the draft, particularly when it comes to the quarterback position this year, gives a lot of teams a lot of opportunities. And I say, as it applies to Major League Baseball, just look at the amount of free agents that are still out there in baseball. I don't care where you sit in regards to the pecking order or where your possibilities are or what opportunities you have to win the whole thing in 2018. There are plenty of players you could add that could increase your chances immediately. So baseball, I think it's wide open right now. And usually the NFL is, regardless of what happens in the offseason. Because you talk about 16 games that are played during the regular season in what seems like it goes by in a flash, right? But the NFL, as opposed to other sports, is so built off of momentum. A team plays one good game and maybe the expectations aren't too high for them, but they win a game that they aren't expected to win. And then they win a game that maybe they should win. And all of a sudden, they've won 3 and lost 0, or won 4 and lost 1, when the expectations aren't so high. And then all of a sudden, that team starts to believe in itself. The coaches start to believe in them. And then the media, well, listen, they're puppets. They're going to gravitate towards wherever the team is that's winning. So the media is going to talk about how great they are because their record's good. That's the only reason. And it's up to them to continue to build upon the momentum that they started. But the NFL is different than other sports because the momentum from week to week carries over. It doesn't from day to day in baseball or basketball or hockey. I tell you, especially you look at hockey. Hockey is momentum that's built within the minute. You see how the action just could swing back and forth. You could have a good team and a bad team, and it doesn't matter. It's about the momentum that's on the ice. Who's handling the puck better? Who's moving up and down the ice better? Who's checking, defensively? What goalie has got the hot hand? And that momentum swings moment to moment. Another thing I wanted to get into, and I do want to throw the number out there in case anybody wants to get involved. The number 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. Anything that's on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. The Passball Show, live, Monday through Friday. Today we're 8 to 9. I think Tuesday through Thursday will be 6 to 7, and we actually might not do a show Friday. We'll see what ends up happening. But I did, in regards to football, I wanted to talk about, spend a moment on it. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it. But people every year have a reaction to 2 things. Actually, 3 things. Number 1, the action on the field. How good was the Super Bowl? Was it entertaining? Was it fun to watch? What team won? What was the finish? Yada, yada, yada. The other one is the emphasis that's put on commercials. The Super Bowl commercials, which the average 30-second spot costs $5 million for anybody that wants to advertise during the Super Bowl. And then the other one is the halftime show. So when it comes to the advertising and the commercials, you got to be honest, the quality of the commercials has certainly taken a step back over the last couple of years. There have been very few commercials that are that memorable. The Eli Manning one was pretty good when he was doing a Dirty Dancing scene. But when these advertisers used to bring their absolute A game to the table and would literally spend a year throwing together ideas and putting together a perfect commercial, and by the time it ran, they were excited that people were going to get to see it. It definitely seems like it's done in a half-assed way now. They just got the money, they're throwing it out there, and they're leaving it up to somebody to just throw something together. And I got to be honest, there's very few commercials from last year's Super Bowl that I remember. I can't tell you one. This year, there's a bunch of cobwebs going on in my mind. I don't remember very many. So that means the quality was pretty lousy. And you're talking about multi-million-dollar companies that, number one, have the capital, have the money to invest. They are able to throw $5 million for a 30-second spot. And you know what? If I had $5 million that I was investing in that 30-second spot, I would make sure it was the most memorable thing ever. And if you can't create that, then I'm spending Monday after the Super Bowl firing a bunch of people. Because my $5 million investment went to crap. But the other thing I wanted to touch on, and this is something that happens every year in regards to whoever's doing a halftime show. The halftime show, whether it's good or bad, I will tell you is swayed, if not already determined, by how an individual feels about the person that is performing. If you're a fan of the person that's doing the Super Bowl halftime show, odds are your reviews are going to be positive. if you don't care for or are not interested in the person that's performing on a Super Bowl halftime show, odds are your reaction is going to be negative. But we don't like to talk about this because we like to say, every single one of us likes to say that we're objectively watching everything. And that's part of the problem with America right now. The objectivity has gone right out the window. A lot of how we feel has been predetermined. We've already dug our feet in the sand and said, hey, I don't like this person. I don't like that person. I don't like this person's music. I don't like this person's political views. And this is a major problem where it's impacting us all over the country, whether it's news, whether it's sports, whether it's the Super Bowl halftime show. Objectivity has gone right out the window. And a lot of people, myself included, I admit that I'm flawed. We're all flawed in regards to taking a stance on something and not giving that person a chance to impress us if we've determined that we don't like them, or give that person a chance to fail or do a bad job if we've already given them our endorsement. If you love Justin Timberlake, if you followed him back to the days in NSYNC, if you got every single one of his records, if you've seen him in concert, odds are you're not going to have any problem with the halftime show regardless of what he did or how he performed or how he looked. If you hated NSYNC, if you don't like Justin Timberlake whatsoever, if you can't stand the sight of him, he could have cured cancer right in front of you and you wouldn't have given him credit for it. I'll mention 3 things that were positive with his performance. I like the idea of him roaming around the crowd and being in a different place. I thought he did pretty good there. The tribute to Prince. Good job. And you know what? He didn't throw any sort of politics in your face, which should have made a lot of people happy. Were there flaws to it? Of course. But the bottom line is, if you don't like Justin Timberlake, you probably weren't going to like his performance regardless of what he did. He could have created a new currency and given out free cash to every American, and you still would have found a problem with it. Once again, that's something that goes, not just the Super Bowl halftime shows, but in sports, in news, every single thing we look at. We take our predetermined opinions and where we are unflappable in regards to anything that could change them. We've determined that we like somebody or don't like somebody. There's no way that's going to change. They could turn into the damn devil in front of our face, and if we liked them before, we're going to find something positive in it. So looking back, I think we've taken a step back in regards to the quality of production for Super Bowl commercials. And I think this is something that's going to kind of not be important 5 to 10 years down the road. We're going to watch Super Bowl 62 at whatever location it ends up being determined, and nobody's going to care at all about the commercials. The networks aren't going to be able to get a dime for the airspace in the commercials because nobody's going to care about it. And you know who I blame? I blame the companies that are spending $5 million for a 30-second spot and giving you garbage. As we hit the halfway point here in the Pass Ball Shop. Once again, John Pielli with you. The number, if you want to be involved, 732-364-3598. And I'm going to try to do a semi-live read here, so if it doesn't come out right, I apologize. But St. Aloysius has a Christian Reflections on Addiction seminar that they're doing February 12th, 13th, 15th, and 16th. It's at St. Aloysius Church over at 935 Venice Mills Road in Jackson. And if you're interested, you're invited to an inspirational and informative 4-evening series on the epidemic of addiction within the context of the Christian community. This unique series will offer a plethora of tools, resources, and knowledge to promote understanding and offer hope. The 4 reflective evenings will include prayer, lectures, music, videos, and more, and the program has been referred to by attendees as a mini retreat. Unlike other secular programs, this program fosters Christian mercy, faith, love, and it encourages transformative community action. This series is intended for everyone in the community. Continuation credits are available for chaplains. To register, call St. Aloysius Parish at 732-370-0500. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. Once again, a number if you want to be involved, 732-364-3598. Moving on, I did want to touch on a couple things that I was thinking about in regards to Major League Baseball and their free agency. Obviously, over 100 players are still out there. They haven't been signed yet. And I want to continue to nail down this point because this is something that I've said for a couple weeks now. The thought of collusion that exists amongst owners, there could be something to it. I think it's going to be very hard to prove. But what can be proven, and it's something that has not been spoken about enough, is the fact that Major League Baseball has accepted the fact that it now has a salary cap. Those that are saying, oh my God, how can you say that? It doesn't exist. It was never collectively bargained upon. Should know that the luxury tax and its threshold, which currently sits at $197 million, is right now, as we exist in 2018, existing as a salary cap. A soft salary cap, perhaps, but a salary cap nonetheless. What teams have done is they've tried to get away with operating above the $197 million. And it hasn't worked. Teams did it for year 1, going into year 2, going into year 3. The compound interest in regards to how they're being taxed has forced every team in Major League Baseball, and I'm talking about 30 out of 30, to decide that it's not a good business decision to operate with a payroll over $197 million. And as we sit right now, it looks like the Red Sox might be a little bit over. Whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Dodgers or the Giants, they're all sitting there pretty close. But what they all have in common right now is none of those teams, and add the other 26 teams to this statement, nobody is willing to operate coming into the 2018 season with a payroll over $197 million. And that's impacting free agency. There's a chance that Major League Baseball could start spring training and potentially even start the season in April with all-stars without a job. And I've been questioning, how exactly does baseball go about this? Because obviously there's been some crying out there. Agents like Scott Boras and Brody Van Wagenen have spoken out. Let the media know. Let the owners and the commissioner's office of Major League Baseball know that they're pissed off and the players are pissed off. That's all well and good. But how is this situation going to be resolved? Has it finally become time? And I know the Borases and all the other top agents in Major League Baseball, we're going to work on trying to get an agent to join the program this week. It's on my list of priorities. We're talking about the NFL's list of priorities at the beginning of the show and how it should be to make sure absolutely 100% of the time they know, everybody knows, and it's determined exactly what a catch is. I'm going to work on getting an agent on a show this week to talk about this very subject. Is it time for agents to start accepting a little less? The Borises that have said J.D. Martinez is going to get a $300 million contract. Can he finally realize that that's not going to happen at this time? The Boston Red Sox have a legitimate offer of 5 years and $25 million a season. So 5 for 125. A similar contract that Ryan Howard signed with the Philadelphia Phillies. A similar contract that Josh Hamilton signed with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. That's a good contract in this market right now. Is Scott Boras going to realize that? If he's not, he is at the risk of having his clients start a Major League Baseball season. And I'm talking about J.D. Martinez and Eric Hosmer, all-stars. Jake Arrieta, a Cy Young Award winner and an all-star. We're talking about the possibility that top Major League Baseball players will be without a job when the season starts in April of 2018. How bad does that look for the agent? And Scott Boras wants to keep playing, his hand like he's got these two aces that are sitting there, and he's just going to pull them out. And right now, Major League Baseball's and their team owners and the front offices are holding on to two aces themselves. So it's pretty much a stalemate. And I tell you, if these agents don't start wising up, and it's not like they're taking pennies on the dollar. A 5-year contract for $125 million is still a pretty good deal in this market. It's good for the player. It's good for the team. Eric Hosmer is sitting there with a 7-year offer at about $140 million for the Kansas City Royals, which, by the way, the Royals, in the history of their franchise, have never paid a player close to that over a long-term contract. At some point, you take a step back, and you may have to accept that as being good enough right now. If you don't, you're at the risk of embarrassing these players even more. And when do the players start to wise up? When does the player say, yes, I would love to make $200 million over a long-term contract, but I understand in this market it's not going to happen? When is that top player going to fire Scott Boras and say, spring training is about to start and I don't have a freaking job? That's supposed to be good enough? Scott Boras is doing a good job when these people are out of work? Players that are worth millions and millions of dollars a year are going to be training at the Scott Boras facility because no Major League Baseball team wants to pay them the exorbitant amount of money that the agent is throwing at them. At some point, players are going to want to play. Are they going to continue to drink the Kool-Aid? Continue to listen to Scott Boras when he says everything's okay? No big deal. You'll get your money. Yet teams have already got their charter buses where all the equipment is taken out of the stadium. And those buses are on the road about to drive down to Florida, about to drive to Arizona for spring training. And there's over 100 Major League Baseball players, the majority of them very good players, some of them pretty young, a good amount of them in the prime of their career or about to enter the prime of their career. And they don't have jobs. But nobody's going to throw any blame towards the agents. We're going to touch on that this week. I want to ask some tough questions to an agent. They have a thankless job, but it's also very lucrative and very, very good for them. You got that ass clown agent that was videotaping players in the shower. And the funny thing about it is there's still players that belong to his agency. But it doesn't matter if that guy's representing you or Scott Boras is representing you or anybody is representing you. Teams have decided to draw the line in the sand. Say, number one, we're not going to put our payroll in a position where it's going to be over $197 million. And number two, the demands of these agents have finally gotten to a point where teams don't want to answer to them. So you ask the question, what does that mean for a Jake Arrieta? What does that mean for a Yu Darvish? $100 million contracts seem like they're a good possibility. You would say each one of those pitchers in the market of today's baseball are probably worth in the excess of $100 million over the course of a long-term contract. But what does that mean going forward? And which player out of this free agent class has finally had enough? There's got to be somebody with the balls to stand up and say, you know what, I want to play baseball. Maybe it's time to stop with these ridiculous demands and put me, the client, in a position where I could have a job, where I know where I can move my family to, where I know which organization I'm going to be playing for, and how I can get together with the rest of my team and coaching staff and figure out how the team is going to put itself in the best position to win this season. You could probably start an entire spring training team of free agents once spring training starts. You could put that roster together. You could probably fill two teams. Let them compete. Call them the Boruses and the Rock Nations. Have them compete against the other 30 teams in Major League Baseball. And those teams would probably beat any one of those teams with the talent that they have. You could put together probably at least one all-star team with the amount of free agents that are out there. And then once again, once spring training starts and games are being played, now you're talking about the risk that a free agent that's signed during spring training may not be ready to start the season. And you want to trust that every single player, especially if you don't have a job right now, you have yourself in the best shape, you're conditioning, you're going to be ready to play once you get that call. But it's not a guarantee. What if some of these players are starting to cast doubts over whether they're going to play? All of a sudden they have to be worked into shape, but they also have to get used to and comfortable around their new surroundings. That's all going to take time. Baseball, as the season's about to start, is kind of in uncharted waters. You could say in some cases that there are better free agents that aren't signed and that grouped together make a better team than some teams in Major League Baseball. Maybe even a good handful of teams in Major League Baseball. Moving on, I wanted to talk about something that I find interesting, and I understand it from the root of it. In my heart of hearts, I'm compassionate enough to know when somebody goes through something serious. You find out a family member is sick. You find out what kind of disease they have or what kind of sickness they have. And once that happens, your interest becomes in curing whatever that disease or sickness is. But I think it is a little bit selfish when people decide to only support the causes that are the closest to them. When you spend years of your life not thinking about or caring about or supporting the cause of curing cancer, and then all of a sudden you're diagnosed with cancer and you become the biggest advocate of it. You have a child that has multiple sclerosis. Up until that moment, you could have cared less about it. But all of a sudden, you become an advocate of multiple sclerosis. I understand from a human nature standpoint, when it hits the closest to home is the best time you're going to react. It's when you're going to react in the best way possible. But what about it beforehand? What about it afterwards? We should all support everything in regards to, cancer, multiple sclerosis, all these different foundations that are looking to raise money. But not just raise money, raise awareness to the fact that this can happen to every single one of us. So you're going to spend a bunch of time until you get that diagnosis not caring or not thinking about it or not making a big deal of it. But all of a sudden you get that diagnosis or a loved one of yours gets that diagnosis. And all of a sudden you become the biggest advocate of this illness, this sickness or disease or whatever it is. And you want to raise money for it. But you didn't want to raise money for it before because it didn't concern you or your loved ones. But all of a sudden it does. And you can't wait to share that banner. Raise money. Please cure me or my loved one. And every single one of us out there, or every single person out there that has had to deal with something like this understands. And I guess the question, as I'm questioning myself as I'm saying this, is there any benefit of listening to others that are going through something? Being close to somebody that's not your direct family that is dealing with cancer. Or a family that has a sick child. To be around them and support them. Not just with the hopes that you won't have to go through the same thing, but just to give them the support that they deserve. Don't ignore it because it's not you. Because I promise you, once it becomes you, all of a sudden you're going to care. You're going to believe a lot more in this cause because it's you, or it's because it's your own kids or your own family members. But up until you got that diagnosis, you could have cared less. Maybe instead of throwing your own political views out there, which you think the whole world wants to hear about, why don't you spend a little time talking to somebody that got that bad diagnosis? May not have that long to live. And their family around them is a nervous wreck. They're devastated. Why don't you spend a little more time with them? Instead, what a lot of people are doing, they can't wait to broadcast their political views and all their social views on Facebook as if anybody really gives a blessed shit. One day realize nobody cares. The problem is we seem to care less about each other now than we ever did before. And we have a certain amount of time that we have on this planet. Now, nobody likes to be told what to do. And the reaction is going to be either positive or negative. It's going to be like, hey, he has a point. Or it's going to be, hey, I know everything. Nobody tells me what to do. But I think when it comes to families that are dealing with a crisis that could potentially involve life or death, it's very selfish when you decide to just ignore it. I know there's that rhetorical, hey, sorry about your situation. Is there anything I could do? But leave it open to a point that, hey, if you are suggesting something to do it. So once again, the diagnosis sucks when it's for somebody else, but you quickly forget about it. But when it's you or a loved one, you have a different kind of reaction. And all of a sudden you want to tell everybody to support. You know, the cancer fund or multiple sclerosis or any other terrible diagnosis that anybody could have had. When it's not you, who cares? But when it's you, yeah, all of a sudden you want to draw attention to yourself because you're terrified. You're scared. You're worried. How about a shout out to all of those that are going through a situation like that right now? How about a moment to let them know that you care a little bit? That you're going to spend a couple seconds of your day thinking about them. And you know what? The fact that they may be linked to a charitable organization, maybe throw a little bit of money their way. Couple bucks. Come on. Stop being selfish. Last point I'm going to make in regards to the Super Bowl. I'll tell you, I look back at the game. And, you know, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, they had a chance to accomplish something that had never been done before. They're already in uncharted waters. They've already won 5 Super Bowls by themselves, which no other coach has ever done. Now, if you look at the great Vince Lombardi, you combine his Super Bowls and NFL championships, yes, he won 5. Bart Starr as a quarterback won 5 NFL championships and Super Bowls. So what the Patriots missed out on is a chance to take that coach and that quarterback and do something that had never been done. The NFL and the AFL weren't merged yet. So the best teams in each one of those leagues did not get the chance to play against each other. That's not Vince Lombardi and Bart Starr's fault. So the question is, what will happen or what can happen going forward with this Patriots team? Do they have another run in them? And I think it's a pretty easy answer. I think they do. I think the Patriots, as they go forward, have at least one more season where the coach and the quarterback can make a legitimate run. And I think they could have won the game yesterday. You know what? The Eagles outplayed them, and they deserve credit. Do the Patriots have enough in them to win another Super Bowl? I think it's easy to say they can. How much does Tom Brady have left? I don't know. We already know he's going to play next year. We already know he wants to play until he's 50. But I think right now he's going to take it on a year-to-year basis. For all that talk that the coach is going to step down, I'll tell you, I would be absolutely shocked if Bill Belichick left the New England Patriots. And I don't care how much the media wants to throw fodder on it and create this illusion that there's so many contentious issues going on and that that locker room and that front office, I would be absolutely shocked if Bill Belichick not only walked away now, but walked away anytime soon. Pats are probably going to be the cream of the AFC again next year. And I tell you, it'll take a lot in regards to the draft and a lot in free agency for the Patriots to not be favored to go back to the Super Bowl and be there again in Super Bowl 53. Big thanks to everybody that tunes into the program, even if it was for a minute. We'll be back with you tomorrow on Periscope, Facebook Live, and on demand on YouTube. Talk to you tomorrow. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.